Always choose truth.
We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world for
Is that going to
Syria. 5 years after the war began, images of bombings, destruction and suffering continue to dominate the coverage on our television screens. This is the ancient city of Aleppo, Syria's largest, a financial hub and home to a World Heritage Site. Anti-government rebels partially control the city for some time, but have lost much of it after intense Russian airstrikes in support of Syrian government forces. Once the bustling city of 2 million, Aleppo is now a war zone, mortared and shelled into oblivion. A city under attack and under siege. Many have been killed, many more have fled. But what about those who stayed, those who were trapped inside? Away from the battlefront, what has life become for the people of Aleppo? This is what renowned Syrian photographer Ammar Abd Rabbo has tried to capture. Rabbo is one of the Arab world's prominent photographers. For the past 20 years, he's witnessed some of the most profound political changes in the Middle East and made intimate portraits of heads of states. From Libya to Iraq to Lebanon, his works have been published in the world's most widely circulated publications, earning him numerous awards and accolades. Over the last few years, Ammar Abd Rabbo has traveled to Aleppo several times to bring back images. These are snapshots of everyday life that not only remind us of the impact of this war, but also show us the strength and resilience of the people of Aleppo. What photographer Ammar Abd Rabbo has tried to capture is very different from what many people see in the media. His work gives us a glimpse into what life is like for the children, the merchants and soldiers of Aleppo away from the battlefront. This is his exhibition being held here in Doha, showcasing his photographs that document both the extraordinary and mundane aspects of everyday life in Aleppo. Syrian photographer Ammar Abd Rabbo talks to Al Jazeera. Ammar Abd Rabbo, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera.
Thank you.
The first obvious question is, why Aleppo? Why not Damascus, where you were born, or Homs, or any other war-ravaged place in Syria? Why did you want to tell the story of Aleppo through these photographs?
Of course, it could have been Homs, because I was interested in documenting a martyr city. Damascus, that is my hometown, is not a martyr city yet. It is the city where the government is, where the regime is, and it's very complicated to get there, and nothing much is happening inside Damascus. Aleppo is a symbol because it's the oldest city in the world, or one of the oldest that was always been inhabited. It is the place for many of our civilization tools, let's say, or civilization signs, from the soap that's very well known to food. The food from Aleppo is one of the best in the area, if it's not in the world, etc., etc. It used to be once a city where Christian, Muslim, Jews lived together, not always in love and harmony, but at least live together and build and create an amazing city. Today, as you see it here around us, it's wounded, it is bleeding, but it's still very lively, it's still very touching.
A city that has suffered tremendously in the last 5 years, but yet it was important for you to show that this is a city where life still goes on despite the war, despite the destruction and devastation. Tell us about, I think, one of my favorite photos in this collection, and a lot of people I think would agree with me, of the two little girls, their heads covered, going to school amidst all the destruction and devastation. Tell us about this particular photo.
This is a photo that I took in June 2014, one day when I was looking for something totally different, and suddenly at the end of the street I see these little girls. I do the photo, and then I realize when you look at it more closely that they're eating chips. They're doing
just like any other schoolgirl anywhere else in the
everywhere
world.
in the world. They would be eating chips and maybe gossiping or talking about their friends, and it's amazing because it says a lot. I mean, we all know around us in Europe or in the Gulf area, people who would say, oh, it's raining today, I won't send the kids to school, or it's snowing today, or something like that. And here it is shelling today, you know, it's under bombs, it's under terrible moments and violence, and still people send their kids to school. It says a lot about Aleppo and about the people.
The resilience.
And the resilience and the resistance. It's also a form of resistance to say, school is important. School is before everything. They have to go to school.
But it's important to point out, Ammar, that most of these photographs, for the most anyway, were taken 2-3 years ago. Aleppo, as we know, was for a long time divided between opposition and government control areas. Some areas, in fact, changing hands within a day. This is a city that suffered tremendously and where things have changed a lot in the last 2-3 years. Tell us about when you were there, what you saw and what you heard from the people of Aleppo, those who stayed, those who weren't able to flee.
Well, what you hear from them is an amazing energy. You know, they have an energy that you don't see often. They all have huge hopes. You know, they know that what they are suffering, what they are taking is for their good, that one day it will be better, if not for them, for their kids. This is something amazing. They have a real trust in the future that a lot of us lost.
Is that hope still there? And, you know, as a Syrian yourself, did you ever imagine 5 years ago that your country, Syria, would be in this state today?
No, of course not. I wouldn't have imagined. Yes, the hope might be less, because a lot of the people that I've traveled with or I've been with 2 or 3 years ago, some of them died, left us. Some of them left to Europe or to Turkey because they've been exhausted from this is a very tiring situation, you know, to live it every day. So yes, of course, there is less hope. Yes, I won't deny it.
So the mindset has changed.
The mindset has changed. The people have changed, but there is still hope. There is still none of them think we wish we didn't do that. We wish we didn't shout. We wish we didn't scream. We wish we didn't demonstrate. You don't hear that at all.
As a photographer, Ammar, there's always a risk that your pictures can be seen as propaganda. Is that something that you try to avoid in your work, or on the contrary, do you want your pictures to say something and to mean something?
Of course I want them to say something and to mean something, that is sure. But honestly, I don't see any propaganda in them, because it's I am there in a situation and I push on the button. You mentioned the 2 little girls. What kind of propaganda is that? Some people would tell me, oh, they are covered with veils.
Yeah.
You are serving this or that speech. I did not bring the veils. They are like this. There is another photo of a little girl who doesn't have a veil. I don't know what this means. I think everyone
has their own interpretation
exactly.
of a picture anyway.
And you can't avoid
very
that.
Subjective,
you know.
right?
You show the photo and then people interpret it in a different way. There is one, for instance, behind me of a soldier having a nargile, you know, a water pipe, a shisha.
Shisha, right.
A shisha in the middle of the souk that he's guarding with his weapon, etc. And some people, when they watch it, they say, wow, this guy is having a good time, you know, having a good moment, even of the war, even during the war, even during the shelling, even in a very tough situation. His tea and his shisha are important. And some other people I've seen are telling me this is a very bad image of the Free Army, because it shows
the Free Syrian Army.
Of the Free Syrian Army, because it shows the guy a bit lazy or enjoying a shisha. He's not here for that. He's not. So you can't avoid to have people.
Would you say that that's the photographs in this collection that's sparked perhaps the most controversy, or is there another one that people have talked a lot about because, you know, they have different views and a different way of seeing it?
On almost every picture you can have people, I mean, unless there are 2 or 3 pictures at the entrance that look like postcards. These, nobody...
The one of the fruit vendor in Aleppo I found very interesting.
For instance,
a very colorful photograph.
The fruit vendor also make people talk, and it says a lot, because he's not selling bread. He's selling generic, which is a very special kind of green plum that you find in Syria in spring. And it's some kind of luxury. So people, when they see it, they're telling me, oh, in Aleppo they're eating generic, and we thought they were under shelling and they're besieged and they are starving, etc. Yes, they are. So again, I tell you, what kind of propaganda would that be? What you see in the street, you see it here on the photo, and that's the most important.
When you shoot a particular photo, do you think about it before you shoot it, or do you just go ahead and click on that button and shoot it, and then afterwards decide whether or not it's a good picture? What's the process like, basically? I'm interested in finding out how you decide, oh, this is going to make up for a good picture.
No, usually in very few of these photos are, let's say, thought about or planned, because you don't know. You're walking or you're driving around, and suddenly you see a moment. It's a very fast moment, like the bike, the guy with the bike under the rainbow. That's only less than a second. It's very, very fast, very quick. So you don't have a moment to think about it. You shoot the picture because you think it will be nice. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's totally a terrible picture and nobody wants it.
What makes for a terrible picture? I mean, it's all subjective, isn't it? I mean,
it is,
a terrible picture for you might be
an
amazing one
but
for me.
you can tell, but very, very few of them are, you don't have time. Sometimes you're really in the middle of a shooting or of a battle, so you have to just do it.
There is the risk, and I do want to talk about that, because, you know, since 2011, close to 100 photographers and journalists have been killed in Syria. This is according to the Committee to Protect Journalists, many of them deliberately targeted. Why do you think, as a photographer, do you take the risk to go to a war zone like Aleppo or Homs?
Because it's my duty. I mean, as a photographer and as a Syrian also. I can't look somewhere else. I can't avoid, because it is risky. The risk is there, but it's our duty to tell and to show and to go watch for ourselves, because the particular things about Syria and the war and the revolution there is that it is the most documented war ever. You know, everybody is shooting pictures and film. You go on YouTube, there are hundreds of thousands.
There are a lot of citizen journalists.
Soldiers,
yes.
Daesh regime, anybody is shooting all the time and filming and then posting pictures. On the other hand, as you said, it is one of the most dangerous and the most killing
because
war.
Journalists in Syria have been deliberately targeted. I mean, historically, though, journalists have tended to enjoy a certain immunity in war zones. Why hasn't that been the case in Syria? Is it because it's difficult to know who the good guys are versus the bad guys?
No, you know very quickly who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. Since the beginning, 5 years ago, it was also a battle of information and of media. Since day one, the regime was telling us about Al-Qaeda, about the international terrorists coming from I don't know where, saying there are no Syrians, etc., etc. So anyone, was it a citizen journalist or a real journalist or a professional or a photographer or whoever carries the camera and shows what's happening, shows the truth, is an enemy.
Right. But Ammar, on that, there's also been criticism of the Western media that they've spent a lot of time reporting on the rebel side. So the story was basically skewed to their narrative that, you know, the lack of spontaneous uprisings sometimes in major population centers at the beginning of the war 5 years ago, major population centers like Aleppo, was perhaps indicative of a level of passive, if not active, support of the Syrian regime. What do you say to that?
No, first of all, the regime knows why journalists were rather going to the rebel side than to his side, because he wouldn't allow them to go in. You need a visa, you need to be cleared, you need to be checked, you need to be accompanied all the time by a minder, things like that. So in different proposals, in different plans, I remember the Arab League plan or something like that in 2012, the regime said, I will open borders to all journalists to come and see what's happening. It never happened. The same applied to human rights workers, for instance. The regime keeps saying that the human rights workers are manipulated, they are lying. They say, on the other hand, it would never open the borders for them to come and see and report what's going on. I would agree that with the regime that people are lying and people are manipulating, but then let us see the truth.
How much support would you say today is there for Bashar al-Assad in Syria 5 years on, with keeping in mind the war fatigue you've told us about? You know, people just want to go on with their lives and so on. Would people rather just see Bashar al-Assad stay today in power and have the war stop?
I had...
when you talk to your friends?
Yes, when I talk to my friends in both sides, let's say, I always had the feeling that there are in Syria, so let's say, 20% of people who love Bashar and wants him to remain forever, and 20% who would hate Bashar and would like him to leave as soon as possible, and let's say 60% who are waiting to see which side will
win the war.
And then they would make up their mind.
Do you think any side will win this war?
I think and I believe the people's side will win the war, yes. You can do nothing against people who dance and chant under the shelling. You can do nothing. You can delay it. You can get Hezbollah to support you. You can get the Iranians to support you. You can get the Russians to bomb your own people. But at the end of the day, you know that it's over.
I want to come back a bit more and talk a bit more about your work as a photographer and the risks you take going into these war zones. In your case, it's been Libya, it's been Syria, of course, your home country, it's been Iraq over the last 20 years. For many photographers, especially the young ones, photography and going into these war zones is very glamorous. There's a certain addiction to it. Where do you, as a veteran photographer, draw the line? Where's the red line for you? When do you decide it's too risky to go in?
First of all, I grew up, part of my childhood was in Lebanon during the war, so I don't have any glamorous feeling towards war. I hate war. I think it's terrible. I'm not a war photographer. I don't run after it. I don't like what people describe as adrenaline or excitement or the glamour or all of this. But sometimes it is, as I told you, in these areas that I know that are places where I've lived or places where I have friends, like Iraq or Syria, of course, or Libya, I can't escape. I can't avoid. I cannot not go there. But I am someone who is very easily scared. I am a scared guy. You have people who say, I'm never scared. No, I'm scared. When there's a shelling, when there are bombs, when there's shooting, snipers, etc., I am someone who's scared. So the red line is there for me. As much as possible, I would like to see my kids growing up. I would like to see them graduating, etc. So there's not one photo, I think, that is more important than this.
Ammar,
and that makes a terrible photographer.
Well,
because usually,
judging from what we're seeing here and judging from your work, I would say not. But
no, usually a photographer, we should say, a photo is more important than anything else in the world, and I cannot say that.
So in your 20-year career, moving on to your other works now, you've amassed a lot of photos of world leaders, celebrated figures, heads of states, presenting in some of the photos that I've seen anyway, a rare glimpse of them, choosing to focus on a spontaneous moment that in some cases portray their humanity. And the first photo I would like to talk about is this one of Bashar and Ammar Assad. This was taken before the war. Tell me about this particular photo.
It's one of the coldest photos I've done because it's minus 20, I think, the day we did this photo, and I was surprised that I could still shoot photos with this weather. I don't think the humanity of Bashar al-Assad or other people is an accusation. People sometimes want to accusate me with this. Say you are showing them as human beings. And for me, they are definitely human beings. And they have to be human beings, and they have to be accountable of what they do. But if you don't look at them as human beings and you put them in the monster or in the devil area, then you can't judge a monster.
And then there's this one, very glamorous one of the First Lady of Syria, Ammar Assad. When, again, you look at these pictures today, just touching on what you just said, do you have any regrets taking these photos when you keep in mind your friends who've died during this war. I mean,
Yeah,
this is a...
not at all. I don't have one single regret because, again, we go back to what we were saying before. Some people would see this as propaganda. I don't see it as propaganda. The photo with the snow, for instance, let's talk about this one. Yeah. I showed it once in Dubai, and in the same half an hour, I had two totally opposite words. One guy said, "Oh, this photo shows exactly Bashar as a clown, because look at him under the snow. Look at his hand. Look at his position, etc. This guy is nobody." And half an hour later, there was someone telling me, "I love this guy. He's brave. He's courageous. You showed him like he is under the snow, etc."
Would you still shoot photos of them today if they invited you to Damascus to shoot photos of them?
I think they would not invite me. I think they would not invite me, but if they did, yes, it would be a huge. It's always a scoop, you know, and I'm always after a good story, but they would not invite me.
Okay. Then there is this one of the late Libyan leader, Muammar Gaddafi. You covered Libya extensively, of course. And at one point in your career, some people would call you the photographer of dictators and tyrants. How did that make you feel?
I don't like it. I don't like it. I feel bad about it. I wouldn't like to remain this guy. But
so this is a photo that you regret then?
No, I don't like people calling me like this, because I do also photos of fashion, I do also photos of nudes, I do also Michael Jackson. So I don't like people to stay on leaders and of dictators. I did also Nicolas Sarkozy or François Hollande.
Yeah,
they're not dictators.
But so, I mean, this is Muammar Gaddafi.
Yes, so I don't regret this photo. I regret that people would only limit my work and my career to this. But no, I don't regret it, because again, what I am doing is showing these people how they are. They are, for some people, they are clowns in a very operette uniform, something very elegantly designed, when you know the jails of Gaddafi, when you know the terrible reality of the Libyans during 42 years. I show how they are. I don't, again, I don't doctor these photos, I don't change anything. This is how they are.
I think this one is perhaps your most famous shot, which made the cover of Time magazine, and it's the assassinated former Pakistani Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto. Tell us about this particular photograph and why you think it became such a famous shot.
Unfortunately, these things don't depend on me. We did these photos, and at that time they weren't very important to many people. I like very much not the one on the Time magazine, the other one, because she has something very much of a maybe prayer position, or she's looking up in the... It has something very religious, very Madonnesque, let's say, from the Virgin Mary, or something very, very... I like this picture a lot. So we did it, and then 6 or 7 years later, when she was assassinated, Time magazine picked it up, and many other magazines and newspapers run these photos. As I tell you, once you do the photo and you publish them, or you offer them to be published, they don't belong to you anymore. People can hate them, people can love them, people can... Today they share them on their Facebook or their Twitter account. It's not my decision.
This one, I think, is your favorite one. Tell us about this photograph and what it means to you.
I love it a lot, because this is in Hama, in Syria. And you have these water wheels that date from the 14th century, I think. They're like 600 or 700 years old. And they are still maintained, and they still work. And the kids there, they like to stand on them and go up, then jump in the river. And this photo is taken at just before they jump in the river. And I called it waiting for the right moment, because this is what's happening now in Syria, and this is what happens in our lives usually. You know, we wait for the right moment. It can be, if you try to jump before the right moment, you might hurt yourself, and if you don't jump, the moment is past and it's too late. So there is always a very particular right moment in our lives. We're always looking for that. You know, we're always waiting for that.
That's beautifully said. Ammar Abd Rabbo, thank you so much for talking to Al Jazeera.
Thank you for receiving me.